The rain tapped a restless rhythm against the windows of the old Victorian house on Elm Street, its panes rattling as if eager to spill secrets. Inside, Sarah Grayson sat at the kitchen table, a mug of tea cooling in her hands, her eyes fixed on the sketch her son, Milo, had left behind. 8 years old, quiet as a shadow, Milo had always drawn stick figures, trees, the usual child scribbles. But this was different. This wasn't a house or a dog. This was a car, crumpled against a tree, its hood spewing smoke, and beside it, a figure sprawled in the dirt, red crayon bleeding across the page. Sarah's stomach twisted. She'd found it that morning, tucked under Milo's pillow while making his bed. He'd been at school all day, his backpack slung over his small shoulders, his dark eyes avoiding hers when she'd asked what he'd dreamed about. Nothing, he mumbled, but the sketch said otherwise. It wasn't just the violence that chilled her, it was the detail. The car's license plate read JRK 472, the tree had a lightning scar splitting its trunk, and the figure's jacket was torn at the sleeve, a watch glinting on its wrist. She'd almost thrown it away, chalked it up to a nightmare spilling onto paper, but something stopped her. Milo didn't watch TV, didn't play those violent games other kids loved. Where had this come from? The clock ticked past 6 p.m. and she paced, waiting for him to get off the school bus. The rain thickened, blurring the world outside, and a faint unease settled in her chest. The phone rang, shrill and sudden, snapping her from her thoughts. She grabbed it, expecting the school. Maybe Milo had missed the bus. "Hello," she said, voice tight. A man's voice crackled through, gruff and hurried. "Mrs. Grayson?" "Sheriff Tate. There's been an accident on Route 9. Car hit a tree, bad one. Driver didn't make it. Plates JRK 472. You know anyone with that car?" Sarah's breath caught, her eyes darting to the sketch. "No," she lied, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't." The sheriff grunted, promising to follow up, and hung up. She dropped the phone, hands shaking, and stared at the drawing. Route 9 was a winding road 10 miles out, lined with oaks. One famously split by lightning years back. She'd driven past it 100 times. And now Milo had drawn it hours before it happened. The front door creaked open, and Milo shuffled in, soaked from the rain, his sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. "Hi, Mom," he said, soft and flat, dropping his bag. Sarah knelt, gripping his shoulders, the sketch clutched in one hand. "Milo, what is this?" she asked, holding it up. His eyes widened, then dropped to the floor, his small frame tensing. "Just a picture," he muttered. "This isn't just a picture," she said, sharper than she meant. "A man died today, Milo, in a crash exactly like this." "How did you know?" He flinched, stepping back, his damp hair sticking to his forehead. "I didn't," he said, voice trembling. "I just drew it. Last night. It came to me." Sarah's throat tightened. Came to him? Like a vision? She wanted to shake him, demand answers, but his face, pale, scared, stopped her. She pulled him into a hug instead, his wet clothes soaking hers. "It's okay," she lied, smoothing his hair. "We'll figure it out." But as she held him, she felt it. A distance, a quiet that wasn't just shyness. He'd always been odd, her Milo, born silent, no cries, just those dark eyes watching. Doctors called it a quirk, but now she wondered. That night, she locked the sketch in a drawer, its red crayon blood haunting her dreams. She woke to a scream, Milo's, rushing to his room. He sat bolt upright, sheets tangled, a pencil still in his hand. On his nightstand, a new drawing. A house engulfed in flames, windows shattered, a figure trapped inside, clawing at the glass. "It's going to happen," he whispered, tears streaking his face. "I saw it." Sarah snatched the paper, her heart pounding. The house was unmistakable, Mrs. Carter's down the street, with its crooked chimney and ivy-covered porch. "When?" she asked, dread pooling in her gut. Milo shook his head, curling into a ball. "Soon," he said, voice small. "I don't want it to." She stayed with him until he slept, the sketch burning a hole in her thoughts. At dawn, she called Mrs. Carter, no answer. Panic clawed at her, and she drove over, Milo in the back seat, silent and pale. The house stood quiet, ivy intact, no smoke. Relief washed over her, until she smelled it, faint but real, gas. She banged on the door, then called 911. Firefighters found a leak, a spark away from disaster. Mrs. Carter, shaken, thanked her, oblivious to the drawing that saved her. Back home, Sarah locked the second sketch with the first, her hands trembling. Milo hadn't just predicted it, he'd stopped it. But how? And what came next? As he slept, she watched him, his small chest rising and falling, and wondered what else he'd see, and what it would cost them both. The kitchen was a fortress of locked drawers and unspoken questions as Sarah poured cereal for Milo, her hands unsteady. 2 sketches now sat hidden in the old oak desk. 2 grisly predictions, one averted, one come true. The car crash on Route 9 looped on the local news, a grainy photo of the wrecked sedan flashing across the screen, its license plate blurred but seared in her memory. JRK 472. Beside it, Mrs. Carter's near miss lingered like a ghost, the gas leak's acrid scent still clinging to her clothes. Milo's drawings weren't coincidence. They were warnings, and Sarah didn't know how to carry that truth. Milo sat across from her, spooning Cheerios into his mouth, his dark eyes fixed on the table. He hadn't spoken since last night, since whispering soon over the sketch of the burning house. She checked on Mrs. Carter again that morning, safe, rattled but alive, and the relief was a thin shield against the dread building in her chest. "Milo," she said softly, setting her coffee down. "We need to talk about the pictures." He froze, spoon halfway to his mouth, then set it down with a clink. "I don't want to," he mumbled, pushing his bowl away. Sarah leaned forward, gentle but firm. "Honey, I know it's scary, but you saved Mrs. Carter. You saw something bad, and we stopped it. How does it happen? When you draw." His fingers twisted in his lap, knuckles white. "It's like a dream," he said finally, voice barely audible. "But I'm awake. I see it clear like a movie. Then my hands move, and it's on the paper." A chill ran through her. "Do you see it now?" she asked, glancing at his empty hands. He shook his head, but his eyes darted to the window, where rain streaked the glass in relentless sheets. "Not now. Comes when it wants." Sarah swallowed, the normalcy of cereal and rain clashing with the weight of his words. "And the crash?" she pressed. "You drew that before it happened too?" He nodded, slow and reluctant. "Night before. Woke up with it done." She sat back, mind racing. 2 events, 2 nights, random, unconnected, yet Milo had seen them both. Was it a gift? A curse? She thought of calling someone. A doctor, a priest, but what would she say? "My son predicts disasters in crayon?" They'd take him, test him, lock him away. No, this was hers to solve. The school bus honked outside, and Milo grabbed his bag, silent as he shuffled out. Sarah watched him go, his small figure swallowed by the rain, and felt a pang of helplessness. She spent the day cleaning, avoiding the locked drawer, but the sketches pulled at her like a magnet. By noon, she gave in, spreading them on the table. The car crash was chaos, sharp angles, violent red. The house was despair. Flames curling, the figure's hands smeared in black. Milo's art was crude but precise, a child's hand guided by something older. The phone rang, shattering her focus. "Mrs. Grayson? Sheriff Tate again," the voice said, clipped and tense. "Got an ID on the Route 9 driver, James Keller, local mechanic." "You sure you didn't know him?" Sarah's throat tightened. Keller's garage was 2 blocks away. She'd seen him wave at Milo once, friendly-like. "No," she said, forcing calm. "Never met him." Tate paused, then added, "Weird thing, found a kid's drawing in his truck. Car crash, looked just like the wreck. Any chance your boy?" Her blood ran cold. "Milo doesn't know him," she snapped, sharper than intended. "Must be a coincidence." Tate grunted, unconvinced, and hung up. Sarah's hands shook as she locked the sketches away again. Had Milo given Keller the drawing? No, he'd hidden it under his pillow. Someone had taken it or... She pushed the thought aside, unwilling to follow it. When Milo came home, soaked and quiet, she didn't ask about Keller. Instead, she cooked dinner, mac and cheese, his favorite, watching him eat in silence. "Did anything happen at school?" she ventured. He shrugged, then paused, fork hovering. Drew something, he said, barely a whisper. Her heart sank. Where is it? He pointed to his bag and she retrieved it, a fresh sketch unfolding in her hands. This one was a bridge, Willow Creek's old stone span over the river, cracked and crumbling, water surging below. A figure dangled from the edge, one hand gripping a rail, the other clawing at air, red crayon streaking from its head. Sarah's breath hitched. The bridge was a mile away, sturdy despite its age. When, she asked, voice trembling. Milo's eyes met hers, dark and hollow. Tonight, he said. I felt it. Panic seized her. She grabbed her keys, the sketch, and Milo, bundling him into the car. The rain pounded harder as they drove, wipers slashing through the blur. The bridge loomed ahead, its arches shadowed in the storm. She parked, flashlight in hand, and scanned the structure. No cracks, no figure. Stay here, she told Milo, stepping into the downpour. Lightning flashed, and she saw it, a hairline fracture in the stone, widening as she watched. A car roared past, too fast, hydroplaning. It swerved, clipped the rail, and spun, its driver. A woman, screaming as the bridge groaned. Sarah shouted, running forward, but the rail gave way, and the car plunged into the river, the woman's arm flailing out the window. Just like the sketch. She dialed 911, voice breaking, as Milo stared from the car, his face a mask of guilt and fear. The river churned below Willow Creek's broken bridge, its dark waters swallowing the car's taillights as Sarah stood frozen, rain plastering her hair to her face. The woman's scream echoed in her ears, cut short by the crash, and Milo's sketch, crumpled in her fist, felt like a confession. She'd called 911, her voice cracking as she shouted over the storm, and now sirens wailed in the distance, red and blue lights piercing the night. Milo sat in the car, his small silhouette hunched, staring at the chaos he'd foreseen. Sheriff Tate arrived first, his hat dripping as he climbed out of his cruiser. "Mrs. Grayson?" he yelled, jogging toward her. "What the hell happened?" She thrust the sketch at him, hands shaking. "This. Milo drew it hours ago. I tried to stop it, but..." Her words trailed off as he took the paper, his brow furrowing at the cracked bridge, the dangling figure, the red crayon blood. He glanced at the river, then back at her, eyes narrowing. "You're saying he predicted this?" "I don't know what I'm saying," she snapped, exhaustion fraying her voice. "It's the third time. The crash on Route 9, Mrs. Carter's house, now this. He draws it, and it happens." Tate rubbed his jaw, skeptical but shaken. "That's a hell of a claim. You got more of these?" She nodded, reluctant. "At home. Locked up." He handed the sketch back, rain smudging the ink. "We'll talk later. Stay put." Divers pulled the car up an hour later. The woman, Ellen Pratt, a teacher, already gone, her arm bent at an unnatural angle, just like Milo's drawing. Sarah watched, numb, as they loaded the body into an ambulance. Tate questioned her again, his notepad soaked. "She was speeding," he said. "Bridge was old, crack might have been there a while. Bad luck." But his eyes lingered on Milo, who sat silently in the back seat, avoiding the sheriff's gaze. Back home, Sarah locked the bridge sketch with the others, the drawer a growing vault of nightmares. Milo curled up on the couch, a blanket around him, his face pale and drawn. "I didn't mean it," he whispered, voice breaking. "I don't want to see it anymore." She sat beside him, pulling him close, her own tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "I know, baby. We'll fix this. Somehow." Sleep eluded her, the sketches haunting her thoughts. 3 predictions, 3 tragedies, 2 deaths, 1 near miss. Was Milo causing them, or just seeing them? She needed answers, but who could help? The next morning, she called Dr. Ellis, Milo's pediatrician, vague but urgent. "He's having visions," she said, avoiding the word drawings. "Predicting things. I'm scared." Ellis, calm and clinical, suggested a neurologist. "Could be seizures, hallucinations. Bring him in." At the clinic, Milo sat still as EEG wires snaked across his scalp, his eyes distant. Dr. Ellis frowned at the results. "Normal," he said, puzzled. "No spikes, no anomalies. He's healthy, Sarah. Maybe it's psychological, stress, imagination." She didn't tell him about the sketches, the proof locked away. Imagination didn't kill people. On the drive home, Milo clutched a blank notepad she'd given him, silent but tense. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. Sheriff Tate stood on the porch, hat in hand, a file under his arm. "Mind if I come in?" he asked, voice softer than before. Sarah let him in, wary, and he spread photos on the table: James Keller's crash, Ellen Pratt's car, both eerily like Milo's drawings. Found another sketch in Pratt's purse, he said, sliding it over. A bridge, a fall, identical to Milo's. How to get there? Sarah's stomach dropped. I don't know, she said, truthful but shaken. He didn't give it to her. Tate leaned back, studying her. Folks are talking Keller, Pratt, Carter's gas leak. They're spooked. Say your boy's different. She bristled, protective. He's 8. He's not hurting anyone. Tate sighed. I'm not saying he is, but this, whatever it is, it's real. I need those other drawings. Reluctantly, she unlocked the drawer, handing over the first 2 sketches. Tate's face hardened as he examined them, the red crayon stark against the paper. Jesus, he muttered. You think he's seeing the future? Sarah nodded, tears welling. I don't know how, or why. He bagged the sketches, promising discretion. I'll look into it. Keep him close. That night, Milo woke screaming again, pencil in hand. Sarah rushed in, finding a new sketch. A playground, swings twisted, a child lying broken beneath, blood pooling in the sand. Tomorrow, he sobbed, clutching her. It's at school. Her heart raced. Willow Creek Elementary, his school. She couldn't stop this alone anymore. At dawn, she called the principal, vague but insistent. Check the playground. Something's wrong. They found a rusted bolt loose on the swing set, a collapse waiting to happen. Fixed by noon, no one hurt. Milo stayed home, pale and silent, the sketch locked away. But as Sarah watched him nap, a new fear crept in. Someone was finding his drawings, planting them at the scenes. Someone new. The phone rang late, no caller ID. She answered, breathless. A low voice rasped, He's good, your boy. Keep him drawing. Click. Her blood ran cold. Someone wasn't just watching. They were using him. The phone's dead tone buzzed in Sarah's ear. The stranger's words. Keep him drawing. A splinter under her skin. She stood in the dim kitchen, the house silent except for Milo's soft breathing upstairs. The latest sketch of the playground locked away with the others. For drawings now, for disasters, too averted, too fatal, and someone out there knew. Not just knew, but wanted more. The thought twisted her gut, fear and anger warring as she gripped the counter. Who was using her son? And how did they know what he saw? Morning brought no answers, just a gray sky and a restless Milo, his dark eyes hollow as he picked a toast. I don't want to go to school, he said, voice small. Sarah nodded, stroking his hair. You don't have to. Not today. She called and sick herself, the diner's bustle a world away. Sheriff Tate had the first 2 sketches, but the playground one and the voice were hers to unravel. She couldn't trust anyone else, not yet. She sat Milo at the table with crayons and paper, a desperate bid to understand. Draw something happy, she said, forcing a smile. A park, a dog, anything. He hesitated, then started, his hand moving slow and deliberate. A tree emerged, then a swing, but the lines darkened, the swing twisting, a shadow creeping in. He dropped the crayon, shaking. I can't, he whispered. It turns bad. Sarah's heart sank. Whatever drove his visions wouldn't let him escape. The doorbell jolted her. She peered out. Sheriff Tate, his cruiser parked crookedly. Got news, he said, stepping inside, his hat dripping from a fresh drizzle. He spread a file on the table, avoiding Milo's gaze. Checked Keller and Pratt, nothing connects. But those sketches in their stuff? No fingerprints but yours and his. Someone's planting them clean. Sarah's breath caught. And Carter's house? Tate shrugged. No drawing there, but the gas leak too close to call random. He pulled out a recorder, clicking it on. Got a tip last night, anonymous. Listen. A low, raspy voice crackled, the boy's a goldmine. Tell his mom to keep coming or we'll take him. Sarah's blood froze, the same voice from her call. When she demanded. Midnight, Tate said, grim. Traced it to a payphone downtown. No cameras, no witnesses. He studied her. You heard this voice before? She nodded, throat tight. Last night. Said keep him drawing. Who are they? Tate rubbed his neck. Don't know. Could be a nutcase, could be worse. I'm posting a deputy outside, discreet. You got more sketches. She hesitated, then handed over the playground one, keeping the bridge copy for herself. Tate bagged it, frowning. This is bigger than Willow Creek. I'm calling the feds. Milo watched from the couch, silent as Tate left. Sarah locked the door, her mind racing. A goldmine, someone saw profit in Milo's visions or power. But how did they know? She checked his room, windows secure, no signs of intrusion. Yet the sketches had reached Keller and Pratt. Someone close, someone watching. She pulled the blinds, paranoia creeping in. That afternoon, she drove to the payphone. A relic by the gas station, its glass smudged and cracked. No clues, just a faint whiff of tobacco lingering, sharp and stale. Back home, she quizzed Milo, gentle but firm. Did you tell anyone about the drawings? A friend, a teacher. He shook his head, adamant. No one. I hid them. She believed him, his fear was too raw. Night fell and Milo slept fitfully, a blank pad beside him. Sarah stayed up, shotgun by her chair, a relic from her father, watching the deputy's cruiser outside. At 2 a.m., Milo screamed, a sound that tore through her. She raced upstairs, finding him hunched over a new sketch. A diner, hers. Its windows blown out, flames licking the counter. A figure slumped in a booth, red crayon pooling beneath. Tomorrow, he sobbed. It's you. Her heart stopped. The diner, her shift. Someone knew her routine. She hugged him, whispering, it won't happen. I'll stop it. But doubt gnawed at her. She called Tate, voice shaking, and he arrived at dawn, deputy in tow. Close the diner, he said, studying the sketch. I'll get a team arson squad. Feds if they'll move fast. Sarah nodded, dialing her boss, who grumbled but agreed. She kept Milo home, the sketch locked away, and watched the clock. At noon, Tate called. Gas line at the diner's tampered, valve loose, just like Carter's. Would have blown during lunch rush. You saved lives, Sarah. Relief flooded her, but it was fleeting. Someone said it, she said. They're testing him, pushing him to draw. Tate's silence confirmed her fear. That evening, a shadow moved outside. A figure, quick and lean, darting past the deputy's car. Sarah grabbed the shotgun, heart pounding, but it was gone. The deputy saw nothing, but she found a note slipped under the door. Good save. More to come. The same raspy voice echoed in her mind, and she knew this wasn't random. Someone was orchestrating Milo's visions, turning his gift into their game. The note, good save. More to come. Lay like a thread on Sarah's kitchen table, it scrawled ink stark against the white paper. The shotgun rested beside it, a cold comfort as the deputy's cruiser idled outside, its headlights cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. Milo slept upstairs, exhausted from tears and the latest sketch, the diner, her diner, now safe but a near grave. 5 drawings, 5 disasters, and someone pulling strings she couldn't see. Sarah's hands clenched, anger overtaking fear. Whoever this was, they'd targeted her son, her life, and she'd end it. Sheriff Tate arrived at first light, his face etched with fatigue. Feds are coming, he said, bagging the note. Prints are clean, gloves, probably. Voice analysis from the tip's a dead end, too distorted. He spread Milo's sketches across the table, a grim gallery. Crash, house, bridge, playground, diner, all local, all precise. Someone's watching him, Sarah. Close. She nodded, the tobacco scent from the payphone lingering in her memory. They know us, she said. Our routines. It's personal. Milo shuffled in, rubbing his eyes, and froze at the sketches. I don't want to see them, he whispered, backing away. Sarah knelt, hugging him tight. You don't have to, baby. We're stopping this. But his tremble told her he didn't believe it, and neither did she, not fully. Tate watched, uneasy. Keep him home, he said. Deputy's staying. I'll check the diner scene again, might have missed something. Alone with Milo, Sarah locked the doors, blinds down, the house a bunker. She gave him a puzzle to distract him, but his hands shook, eyes darting to the blank pad she'd left out. What if it comes again? He asked, voice small. She forced a smile. Then we'll handle it. Together. But her mind churned, someone planting sketches, tampering with gas lines, watching from shadows. A neighbor? A regular at the diner? The list was endless and time was short. Midday, Tate called. Found a cigarette but near the diner's gas valve, a lucky strike, fresh. Matches the payphone vibe you mentioned. No DNA yet, but it's a lead. Sarah's pulse quickened, tobacco again, a thread. Anyone smoke those around here? She asked. Tate paused. Old man Carter does, Mrs. Carter's husband. Lives across from the diner. But he's pushing 70 half-deaf. Doubt he's climbing under buildings. She thanked him, mind racing. Carter, gruff, always with a cigarette, a fixture at the diner's counter. Harmless, she'd thought, but he'd been near every scene. Route 9 mechanic, Mrs. Carter's house, the diner. Coincidence? She grabbed her keys, Milo's hand in hers. We're going for a drive, she said, shotgun tucked under a blanket in the car. She'd confront Carter, quietly test him. His house was a squat ranch across from the diner, its porch sagging, a haze of smoke drifting from an open window. Sarah parked a block away, leaving Milo with strict orders, stay here, lock the doors. He nodded, clutching the puzzle. She approached, heart pounding, and knocked. Carter answered, squinting through glasses, a Lucky Strike dangling from his lips. Sarah? What's up? She forced calm. Heard about the diner gas leak. You see anything odd yesterday? He shrugged, exhaling smoke. Nope. Slept through it. Damn shame though. His voice was rough but not the rasp from the phone. She pressed, casual. You ever notice Milo drawing? He's good. Carter's eyes flicked, a twitch. Kid's quiet. Seen him doodle at the diner sometimes. Why? A lie, she'd never let Milo draw there. Just curious, she said, backing off. Thanks. His gaze lingered as she left, heavy, knowing. In the car, Milo whispered, he's lying. I feel it. Sarah's skin prickled. Carter knew something, but was he the voice? She drove home, doubt gnawing. Too old, too slow, yet the tobacco fit. That night, Milo woke screaming again, pencil in hand. Sarah rushed in, the new sketch a gut punch, their house, flames roaring, her silhouette trapped inside, Milo outside, red crayon streaking from her form. Soon, he sobbed. It's us. Panic seized her. She called Tate, voice breaking. It's our house. He's coming for us. Tate promised a team, but minutes later, she smelled it. Gas. Faint but growing. She grabbed Milo, the shotgun, and ran outside, the deputy's cruiser empty. Coffee break. Damn him. A shadow moved across the street. Carter's house. A figure slipping out. Leaner than Carter, hat low. Not him, someone else. She aimed the shotgun, shouting, Stop! The figure froze, then bolted, vanishing into the dark. Sirens wailed, too late. The house erupted behind her, heat searing her back as she shielded Milo. Firefighters doused the blaze. The house gutted but them alive. Tate arrived, furious. Deputies fired, found another cigarette. Lucky Strike, same as before. Sarah clutched Milo, the sketch singed but intact. It's not Carter, she said. Someone younger, faster. They're playing us. Tate nodded, grim. Feds are here tomorrow. We'll get him. But as Milo slept in her arms, a new fear bloomed. 5 sketches, 5 targets, and the puppet master still free, pulling strings she couldn't cut. The motel room smelled of bleach and stale coffee, a temporary refuge after the fire that gutted Sarah's home. Milo slept on the lumpy bed, his small frame curled under a thin blanket, the singed sketch of their burning house clutched in her bag. 5 drawings, 5 disasters, 3 averted, 2 fatal, and the shadow behind them still loose. The explosion had been no accident. Firefighters found a tampered gas line, a match's flick from oblivion. Sarah sat by the window, shotgun across her lap, the deputy's absence a bitter lesson. Whoever this was, they'd nearly won. Sheriff Tate knocked at dawn, 2 federal agents in tow, stern, suited, their badges glinting. Agent Reese, Agent Cole, he introduced, voice tight. They've got the sketches, the note, the cigarette butts. We're hunting. Reese, a wiry woman with sharp eyes, took the lead. Mrs. Grayson, we're treating this as a serial threat, arson, tampering, stalking. Your son's drawings are unusual. We need to know everything. Sarah spilled it all. The crash, the house, the bridge, the playground, the diner, her home. Her voice steady despite the exhaustion. She handed over the sketches, Milo's crayon nightmares, now evidence bags. Cole, a quiet man with a notepad, frowned. Someone's exploiting him, planting these at scenes, escalating the chaos. Any enemies? Odd visitors. She shook her head. No one. We're nobody. Just a waitress and her kid. Milo stirred, sitting up, eyes hollow. It's not over, he whispered, and Sarah's heart sank. Reese knelt, gentle but firm. "What do you see, Milo?" He hesitated, then grabbed a motel notepad, pencil trembling. His hand moved, fast and sure. A warehouse, its roof caving, flames roaring, a figure inside, hat low, coat swaying, red crayon pooling at its feet. "Him," Milo said, tears welling. "The one who knows." Sarah's breath caught, the puppet master trapped in his own game. "Where?" she demanded. Milo pointed west, vague but certain. "Near the tracks. Soon." Tate cursed, radioing deputies. "Old grain warehouse, half abandoned. Mile out. Fits the bill." Reese nodded. "We move now," said a trap. "He's escalating, might be there already." They drove, Milo in the back seat, Sarah beside him, the agent's SUV ahead. The warehouse loomed by the railroad, rusted and sagging, its windows dark. No smoke yet, but the air felt wrong, tense, waiting. Tate's team fanned out, guns drawn, while Sarah stayed with Milo, shotgun ready. "Stay low," she whispered, her eyes on the building. Milo clutched her hand, trembling. A flicker, movement inside, a shadow crossing a broken window. Reese signaled, and deputies stormed in, shouts echoing. Gunshots cracked, sharp and sudden, then silence. Sarah held her breath until Tate emerged, dragging a man, tall, lean, mid-40s, a gray fedora tumbling off, a Lucky Strike smoldering in his hand. Blood streaked his coat, a bullet in his shoulder. "Got him," Tate said, grim. Resisted, tried to torch the place. The man glared, his rasp chillingly familiar. "Smart kid," he sneered, coughing. "Worth a fortune." Reese cuffed him, reading rights as Cole searched his pockets. A lighter, more cigarettes, photos of Milo's sketches. "Name's Daniel Reese, no relation," she added, wry. "Ex-con, grifter. Been in town 6 months, scoping you." Sarah faced him, fury boiling. "Why us? Why Milo?" Daniel grinned, teeth stained. "Saw him draw at the diner once, crash sketch, before Keller died. Recognized the plate. Tested it, planted it, watched it play out. Goldmine, like I said. Chaos pays, insurance scams, blackmail. You stopped too many, though." He laughed, a wet rasp, until Tate shoved him into the cruiser. Milo stared, silent, as the warehouse stood intact, no fire, no collapse. "It didn't happen," he said, confused. Sarah hugged him, realization dawning. "You changed it. We stopped him first." Reese approached, softer now. "He's done, confessed enough already. We'll dig deeper, accomplices, if any. You're safe." Back at the motel, feds gone, Sarah burned the sketches in a trash can, their red crayon curling to ash. Milo watched, quiet. "Is it over?" he asked, voice small. She nodded, hoping it was true. "No more drawing the bad stuff. You're free." He smiled, faint but real, the first in weeks. They moved, a new town, a fresh start, the insurance money enough for a small house. Milo drew again, trees, dogs, happy things, his hands steady, his eyes lighter. Sarah worked a new diner, vigilance fading to routine. The feds locked Daniel away, his schemes unraveled, no partners found. Willow Creek faded to memory. But one night, months later, Sarah woke to Milo's pencil scratching. She crept in, heart pounding, and found a sketch, a faceless figure, watching from a field, no blood, no disaster. "Who's that?" she whispered. Milo looked up, calm. "I don't know. It's not bad. Just... there." She locked it away, unease prickling. No news came, no tragedies, just a shadow, lingering, a quiet witness to their peace.